So, welcome to episode 3 of Xcede's Data in Sports podcast. So, for any of you that don't know, Xcede are a specialist recruitment agency with a big focus on data. And having worked within the space for around 6 years, we thought we'd get a podcast series going, speaking with a range of different people about their experience around data in sport. So, I'd like to welcome our third guest to the series, Hadi. So, I'll give a quick introduction to Hadi, but I'm sure he can follow this up with some more words about himself. But Hadi is currently studying a PhD at ETH Zürich in football analytics. Prior to that, he's worked for the Performance and Technology Department at the Dutch Football Association as a football data science consultant. And he's also over the years worked on multiple different tactical analysis and player scouting tasks given by a range of different football clubs, not just in the UK, but across Europe and the US and some other areas as well. So that's just a brief introduction, but I'm sure, Hadi, you can give an introduction about yourself, and then we can talk a little bit more as to kind of why I invited you onto the series.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. As you mentioned, my name is Hadi, and it's, I think, maybe, let's say, almost 8 years that I'm working on the field of football data and analytics. So I just did a regular master program in data science, where we had like general courses in machine learning, data mining, process mining, and different types of mining, let's say. And it was a program where it was a double degree program called EIT Master School, supported by the European Union, where I did my first year in Eindhoven at Technical University, and the second year I was in Sweden at KTH. And I was just learning really general stuff about data science and how to do and analyze data. And then after my master's studies, I was not into football, so I was just looking for a job. So it didn't seem feasible at that moment to get a job with a master degree. So I went back to the Netherlands and started a program that right now they call it Engineering in Doctorate. It's a 2 years program in the Netherlands where you are employed by the university, you are paid by the university, and you have the freedom more or less to do what you want to do. So that was at least the situation in my case. And that was exactly the time that I thought what I want to do after I graduate from this program. Because as a data scientist, you can work in different industries. It can be finance, it can be banking, it can be, I don't know, a software company. But which field was interesting enough for me to stay for a long term? I didn't have any idea about how it works in football at that moment. It's for 2018, the story. So I started by just contacting people on LinkedIn who work as a football data scientist at a club, try to get input from them how to start learning. And some of them replied, they gave me some papers or articles to go through. And that was the moment I tried to connect what I learned during my master's studies to what we know from the football area. And I would say I was also lucky because during my first year, Paris Saint-Germain organized a competition, a sports analytics competition. For those who have seen my LinkedIn profile, I have a picture with the Paris Saint-Germain logo that belongs to the final presentation I had there back in Paris in 2019, where among 3,000 participants, I could make it to the final and present how to identify successful pressing moments using tracking data. And that really helped me along my career because when I came back to the Netherlands to continue with my second year of studies, that really facilitated the process to do my 1 year thesis for the performance department of the Dutch Football Association, where my main task was to help automate the tagging process that video analysts and performance analysts have. Because what they do is they sit during the matches that they have and try to collect some data manually, and there are some customized definitions that they have. And what happens if we can automate that process using the event and tracking data and have something that is really more objective, I would say, and also you can create nice visualizations out of that. And then after my, let's say, graduation, that was a time to look for a job in the job market as a football data scientist. And so that was also the time window I applied for a lot of jobs you mentioned in the UK and US or a lot of different countries. As a football data scientist, got a lot of interview tasks, got a lot of experience on how that process looks like. And yeah, we can say it's right now almost 3 years that I'm in the PhD program at ETH Zurich, where a job position called a PhD in soccer analytics was announced, and I just applied through it and was successful enough in that process to be involved in this program. And that's more or less my story so far, to just give the career path.
Yeah, well, look, thanks for that introduction. I think, yeah, it's a very interesting background, because I think a lot of people that kind of go down the alley of data in sports maybe don't kind of take the education as seriously as you have, or at least I guess be a specialist in education, and especially the PhD. So, look, before we kind of talk about some of your experiences, I guess a good starting point is obviously your PhD that you're completing at the moment. So, Hadi's PhD is within football analytics, but do you want to just say a bit more about exactly what that encompasses, and kind of exactly what I guess research you're kind of working on at the moment?
Yeah, indeed. So my PhD project is about, if I want to just put it in simple words, how we can make use of event and tracking data to identify team tactical formations over the match time and not rely only on the starting lineup formation. So when you watch a football match, you see 4-4-2, 3-5-2. That's what comes on TV. If, for example, you are watching, I don't know, on Sky or any other TV broadcast. But of course, during the match time, a lot of things happen. A team gets a red card, they go 1-0 behind in the first 5 minutes, and they adjust the positions of the players, make some changes, they have substitutions, and all these contexts that we know can influence and change how, at the end, the formation of a team looks like over the match time. And what if we can find a solution to efficiently detect the positions of players and also formations of the team, and have a clear picture for post-match or pre-match analysis, where coaching staff need to have reports to get a better feeling about the opponent team and also have a better feeling about how they performed in the recent matches.
Yeah,
And
no,
that's more or less the idea of the research. Of course, you can do something very simple, like in 6 months, that becomes a master thesis. But if you want to really do something deep, investigate a lot of different aspects, so you spend more time, and that becomes like a 3 to 4 year project that you work on, and it can be a PhD
yeah.
project.
Look, I was going to say, just in terms of the actual research, it is really interesting. I guess from your opinion, I appreciate you at the moment. Obviously, it's been very educational. I know you've done some projects, and you work for the Netherlands for a time being. But in terms of football across all areas of the across all different areas of performance, how much do you think these days is based on things like the data that you're doing in terms of obviously working out the best pressing and the best formation, etc., compared to, I guess, what managers are seeing on a day-to-day, or kind of their philosophy of football? How do you think kind of the football world is moving to balance between your thought, like an initial non-technical person's thoughts, and actually the research and background that goes behind it?
I think if we think about it in terms of applications, that can be maybe easy way to understand. So you have a coaching staff, and they have different responsibilities. One of them is to just prepare the reports that they need to do, whether it's an opposition report or whether it's about scouting players for player recruitment or any of these reports. And of course, maybe 20 years ago, what they would have done was to watch video clips if it was available, and then make their decisions based on that. But nowadays, we have access to not only video clips, but because of the different data providers that we have access to different sorts of data. And if we can help the coaching staff to automate some part of their process that they need to go and over all these steps to prepare these reports. if it can help them to automate some part of the process, then that's, let's say, how we can help them to maybe spend less time on some repetitive tasks and focus more on where they can provide maybe more value and be more, let's say, interesting for the team. So, and that's a different approach to football data analysis compared to the ones who are trying to maybe find what's the best way to set up the team or win a match. The first approach that I said was more about supporting, so independent of the coach. So you're basically supporting the coach. You don't say what the coach is doing is right or wrong, but you're helping him or them to monitor their process with some numbers and whether they are within that right track or not based on their track. Whether that track is the ideal track, the optimal track or not, that's, I think, a different question.
Yeah. So would you say that the data teams, I guess, for the internal data football teams are more there as a support function rather than the decision makers?
For match analysis, yes, I would say more as a support function. And yeah, so they try to help automate some part of the process that the performance analysts or video analysts have. And that's, I think, what they are dealing with. But there are other functionalities for a football club, like player recruitment, where maybe the coaching staff are not that much involved. Maybe the other people at the club are involved. And that's where you want to maybe find maybe a consistent way to create player shortlists and then have a good starting point for your scouts to go on the pitch or go and do the video or live scouting.
Yeah, and I guess a big thing, which is obviously a topic of discussion, which I'm sure you've maybe had quite a lot of exposure to, is in terms of the actual gathering of the data, and I guess where the data is coming from. What do you find are the best, I guess, tools within the sports world in order to actually get access to this data? I know a lot of people like doing projects on the side in terms of coming up with different predictions, whether that's about predicting the tables, obviously talking about phases of play and so on. So yeah, I mean, what do you find are the most effective, I guess, tools for people to actually go out and use in order to do their analysis and provide their insight?
I think it depends if you are just doing it as a hobby project and want to create your portfolio, or if you are really working for a football club and you are looking out which are the best data providers and which ones to choose. So I think it really depends on the role that the person has, but I will try to answer both. So if you are just doing it as a hobby project, you can really focus maybe on data collection part as your project that you're looking on and working on, like using the TV footage and TV broadcast to do object detection and try to track the players. And really your project will be on data generation or producing the data. Or you can try to find some public data. There are few tracking data, for example, out there, but a lot of event data, and then use them to answer a question of your interest. But if you're working for a club, then you have a lot of options, because that's where probably you have also the budget to not only rely on free available data, but also spend some time and also money to find which data providers, because there are different sources of data, event data, tracking data. You have the GPS, and also it goes through maybe the medical aspects, and all these different sources, which ones are maybe providing a good enough data in terms of the accuracy and reliability, and then how you need to put them all together, all these different sources, because each one is telling you one part of the story. With the event data, you know what happens on the ball. With the tracking data, you know what everyone else is doing, but you don't know what actions they are taking. And with the GPS data, you bring the perspective from maybe the medical aspects. So I think I try to answer, depending on the person, which data sources can be out there.
And I guess based off of that, then, are we getting to a point where I guess, individuals, whether they're doing it as a side project or even the football clubs, are they building out their own internal data warehouses where they are collecting this data from obviously multiple sources, or is it still, I guess, maybe not as advanced where kind of clubs have a one shop all for all this data, and people are still having to use multiple sources rather than having a centralized data and like a centralized data warehouse, for example?
I think really a good way to understand that is to just look for the job descriptions that some football clubs put out there. And when you just read the responsibilities, you understand if they are looking for some one person who does everything, or they are really looking for a data scientist and data engineer, and then they have different roles. Most of the clubs are looking for someone who comes in and takes all the responsibilities. And that gives you an indication how maybe they will be really dependent on that person. And also it will be something assuming that it's going to only work on the local laptop of that person. And when that person decides to leave, then they need to find out where is the data, who was doing what exactly, where is the documentation. And I would say a lot of clubs are in this situation, at least from my feeling that I just go through the job descriptions that they put out there. And that's like the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my side, I think a lot of football teams or a lot of sporting organisations maybe jump the gun when it comes to data, and their first thing is, can we get a data science in? Because I guess it's the kind of the cool job title to have, and a lot of clubs, a lot of sporting organisations don't actually understand the process of maybe that the first hire needs to likely be maybe a data engineer, where they actually have someone setting up the data in order for then the data scientist or data analyst to go do their work. And I think a lot of the time, that there is a lot of jumping of the gun, and rather setting up the processes in a kind of a more slow and a correct way. People are seeing your Manchester Cities and Liverpool's hiring lead data scientists and so on, and think, oh well, we need to match what they're doing, but they actually haven't thought about, or they don't necessarily have the information on the kind of the full steps of that data lifecycle, and missing out on that sort of initial part, I guess, of actually building out a data warehouse or making sure that the data is readily available for these people to actually go and do their work.
Yeah. So it's really, maybe they also have a budget, and based on the budget that they have, they say if we can go with 1% doing all this stuff, then why not? But then 1% will be overloaded and not able to properly and efficiently provide all you want in a long term, and then the project fails, and then they say, okay, data maybe it's just an extra thing. So let's go back to what you are doing. So I think then it's the decision, if you invest properly, and if you're not, otherwise you will just cancel this project at some point and then go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah. From what you've seen, do you think people in the sports world that are data specialists therefore are maybe potentially overworked and underpaid, maybe compared to other industries? Or do you think, I guess, that the love of sports tends to kind of take over and it allows for that?
Yeah, I think in terms of underpaid, so ideally you will get a salary of an average data scientist. Clearly, you will not get a salary maybe of a data scientist who works in a bank or an insurance company. And then, of course, you will attract a different sector of the market because of that salary range that usually you don't see in the job descriptions. They put it, they say competitive, or they say negotiable. And then when you reach to that point, you understand, okay, what they mean by competitive is just in a different level than what you have as a data scientist in mind. And then that also impacts, okay, what type of people they will hire, and they will not get the best people in the market, not the best data scientists, unless the person is really willing to sacrifice and say, okay, I will go with that salary, and hopefully in some years I will negotiate and increase my salary. Otherwise, you will come up with an average person joining your team as a data scientist. And so you ask and have a lot of expectations to both do the data engineering, data science part, and also do the presentation and go for the whole life cycle. But you look for proper data science teams, you see that there are different functionalities, and it's a teamwork, it's not one person work. And that has a impact on the output. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. And look, let's. What I'm keen to do is kind of go back to the start of your career. So you finished your engineering doctorate, and obviously your aim was to, I guess, partner or be within a sporting organisation, and you obviously luckily got the opportunity to partner as a consultant with the Netherlands FA. I mean, how did that come about? I mean, for people that are in a similar position to you, where they've done a data science masters or kind of have studied it at a fairly strong educational level, what's the step, I guess, to at least get your first foot through the door and have an opportunity like you did, where you were able to partner with the Netherlands FA?
I think some part depends on you. So you have really the commitment, dedication to spend time, try to learn more about football and data, do a lot of hobby projects or attend competitions or hackathons to have the minimum requirement. But then the other side is, or the other part is not really within your control. It's some call it being in the right time at the right moment, some call it luck. And in my case, it was that. So maybe it's as silly as it seems, but I was in the same maybe university as one a professor was there, and that professor's friend was like the someone who was working for the Dutch Football Association, and that's basically you know someone who knows someone, and then you have a meeting, and then you can show what you are doing. But of course, it was if that connection didn't exist, I don't see it possible for me to have that opportunity to do that 1 year thesis for the Dutch FA. And then when you do that, they know you, you know them. And then if they are willing to continue with that initiative, then they will come back to you because there is that background that you both know each other. And then you continue on a like part-time freelancing basis. And I think that's a valid point for a lot of positions in a football data side, that networking that they call it is really playing a key role. That a lot of job positions you see if they're announced on LinkedIn or anywhere, it's really competitive. So within
Yeah.
a day, there are more than over 100 applications. That's what LinkedIn shows on that page. But a lot of positions are not announced there, and it's based on okay, I have worked with that person before. Let's just call him if he's available. Then we just bring him. So then that's also the unofficial route, I would say, which seems more effective because you don't go through the interview process, get a task to do in 3 weeks, try to really convince the person who is hiring you and compete with a lot of others. But also you need to build that connection, and that's it's not always under your control to build that connection because a lot of people want to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, look, I think obviously there is definitely an element of luck to it, but I also think you make your own luck because you network with the people, and look, obviously there is definitely an element of right time, right place, but you've got to put yourself in that position to even be in
Yeah.
that situation
So
in the first place.
yeah, you should have that commitment and that willingness. But it can be the case you don't have that luck, and it takes so long for you, and you cannot wait indefinitely for that opportunity to come. So in the
Yeah.
meantime, you need to maybe have a job, a daily job to pay your bills, and then wait for that opportunity to come. And yeah, so it will be based on how long it takes for you to get to that point.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of your situation, obviously slightly different, but with regards to once you'd finished, or once you were, I guess, completing your doctorate and getting to that position, were you doing at the time? Were you doing side projects? Were you doing going to events and things like that in terms of becoming integrated, or was it only kind of once you'd got that opportunity that you then started to do those things?
I think it will be something that you do over time, whether it's physical presence in an event or workshop or conference, or if it's just an online presence, like what I do, and whether you are really contributing or you want to show yourself. So I think that's also a difference. So maybe some people who are online, hey, they want to really have the self promotion and like a marketing, but some others want to be really contributors to the community and share useful things that are not always about themselves, but it's about finding some interesting things that maybe others can learn and can follow up. And I try to hopefully go with the second approach, and that approach in itself will have the self promotion, I
Yeah.
think.
Just become like Hadi and become the most marketed football data specialist on LinkedIn, where everyone knows you because of your LinkedIn presence.
Yeah. So so going back to my time when I graduated, I found it really difficult to find a lot of job positions in the football area. There were few websites that you needed to really keep track of them to be aware that there is an open position and you have 1 week to just send your application. And there were not that many positions. It's not like you are looking for a data scientist in a bank. You go to the website of the bank. Usually there is a position that they are trying to hire someone, but that's not the case for a football club that you go to the website
Yeah.
and they have it in the career page. So you need to find out where they announce it. Yeah, there are a lot of them are not announced, but the ones who are announced, which are announced, how to find them. And then I found that that's really a demand and need. So now I found a solution to find those positions, for example, and try to share them with my network. And I think that that answers the demand in the people who are interested in this field but don't know where to find these positions. And also just looking through the job descriptions, I try to just have a summary for myself when I'm posting. So it also gives a direction to people. Okay, this is like usually what companies or clubs or media, and it's also not only about clubs. There are a lot of different stakeholders within football that you don't need to be only limited to clubs. Of course, the closer to the pitch, maybe the more interesting it gets. But you have the media, player agencies, all these. I think that one of the first episodes you had was with someone who was working in one of those agencies, and he moved from a club because maybe that was also, in general, all the benefits it has. It was more interesting for him. But then knowing all this stuff and also the job description, I think can help. And yeah, I think also it's a good moment for me to ask a question back to you. So a lot of the jobs, for example, I say are mainly in the UK, which I think one of the main reasons is really that language as a requirement, that it's English. But I want to also know your input based on the previous experience if you had in recruiting a data scientists for whether it's a football club or a media or any other stakeholder, how that process looks like, because I think the UK market seems a bit different from the other markets we have in Europe at least.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I think the job market, especially within sports, the reason why, as you said, that companies or clubs put these adverts out, and within 1 hour they are flooded with hundreds and hundreds of applications. So it's definitely a difficult, like, I guess, area to get into. There's definitely, I guess, more people that want to work in sports than there are jobs available, which means immediately, if for someone wanting to get into that industry, there is going to be fierce competition for roles. I think what I see, and I guess when from previous experience, it is above going above and beyond. It's people that are doing side projects that are getting kind of ahead of other people that aren't. I guess within the industry. I think these days, especially in the UK, there's a lot of very intelligent people coming out of education doing very hardcore data science degrees and artificial intelligence degrees and so on. But I think with football and with sports in general, I think because it's such a popular sport, everyone loves playing sports, especially football. There is I think that the companies that we work with that do recruit, they do like to see people that have kind of not just kind of done that exact same route of going to university and then applying for jobs, but people that whilst they're at university have done side projects. And I think with football, it's one of those weird ones because there are loads of side projects that can be done. I know people myself that aren't necessarily technical, but they really want to get in sports, so they've done scouting for clubs, or they've got in touch with football agents to do scouting on their behalf. So it seems like it's a bit of like, I guess, internship work, or sort of, I guess, kind of cheap free labor. But I think, yeah, unfortunately, in the competitive world that it is, people, unfortunately, I guess, well, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at, do need to kind of go above and beyond and start doing some of their own things in order to make that difference compared to all the other applications that these clubs or organizations see. Which I think, yeah, is important. But I think, as I said, a lot of people do it because they love the game. So for them, even though it's a side project and it might take some time, they're doing it because they're actually interested in it and they want to do it rather than just, I guess, because they have to.
Yeah. And what about the comparison in terms of the work permit situation for non-UK people who are interested? Because I feel that based on the job descriptions, that's like what you should have already before applying. And
Yeah.
that's just the first part for the HR when they are doing the screening part. That's like the first criteria that they are using for creating the shortlist. I don't know whether that's a general case for all the data science jobs in the UK market, or this is only what I see in the football part.
Yeah, I mean it does vary by companies. I mean, the reason for the I guess that visa aspect is because of the cost of it to those organisations. What I have found, especially with the top leading football clubs, is they want to hire the best people no matter where they come from in the world. So sometimes that doesn't matter. I think unfortunately again for smaller football clubs, for smaller sporting organisations, the additional cost of it will definitely sometimes mean that they'll be a little bit put off. But the thing is, we see that not just in football, we see that across all industries within the UK. There are some companies we work with who basically don't care where the candidates are coming from. They just want to attract the best people for the job, regardless of what the cost of it is. But others are more cost efficient. So I can imagine, for example, if a League One or a League Two team were advertising for a data science role, they're probably more unlikely to incur the cost of a visa process and everything that comes with it. But then if you compare that to looking at Manchester City or Liverpool's data science teams, for them it's about hiring the best people. And I think we spoke about this before, kind of when we've been speaking over the last couple of months, that if you look at Liverpool, a lot of the people that they've hired have come from Harvard and have come from universities in the United States, where they will ultimately pay for people's visas, and there won't be an issue with it because they want to get the best people in working at the football clubs. And yeah, so it will vary. Again, the media side of it, it's not too dissimilar. Some organisations we work with are don't necessarily see the value in the cost of it, and some of them do. So that's more. It's company dependent, I would say, and organisation dependent more than a set trend of this size company would be hiring someone with a visa sponsorship, or a smaller company won't. It will completely vary.
Okay, and another question I have is based on your previous experience, which of the routes to find a job in this field is maybe the most efficient one? Whether you for just the online sending online application, competing with other applicants, or you try to go for the networking approach and try to have an online portfolio based on I don't know how many
Yeah, I think
recruitment you have been involved in and how they work, what percentage is through this channel, what percentage is
yeah.
the unofficial one.
I think look, you go through the normal processes like you apply for the jobs, but I think having a portfolio of side projects is really important, especially given the competitiveness of it. I think as well as you said, that the connection part, the connecting with people on LinkedIn, the being active, having posts on LinkedIn so that people can know who you are, some of the stuff that you're doing on the side, if you're posting it on LinkedIn, to make sure you've got a profile which is active. I think that those are the things that are really important. As I said, I think these days a lot of people will apply for a job, and unfortunately, if you're just applying with a standard CV without any side projects, it will just fall into a list of other CVs that are very similar. So I think where people should really need to gain the advantage is having a portfolio of side projects that are easily highlighted, whether that's through a CV, whether that's on LinkedIn, whether it's sending people a URL to take people to that, and then also, as I said, connecting with people, as you said, seeing sometimes jobs that not everyone else is seeing because they're not being posted on LinkedIn, or then getting to meet people, going to these conferences, doing some of the things that you mentioned, which I know are really important in the world, like the things you've done with Paris Saint-Germain, and I know that Manchester City do a data hackathon. I know that there are a number of different networking events and events that some of the larger kind of data providers within sports, Opta and Scout put on, attending these and being present with people in order to get recommendations and referrals is really important these days, as well as obviously having a good looking CV. I think those side projects are very much imperative to kind of really standing yourself out in what unfortunately is a very competitive market. And to be honest, we see this not just in sports, but we see other industries, other top tech tech companies in the world where it is very, very competitive, and just a kind of sometimes a CV just on the face of it isn't enough at the moment. As I said, I don't necessarily agree with it, but when you've got 400, 500, 600 applications, there's not very many ways to distinguish between some other CVs. So those side projects, as I said, I think are really, really important.
Okay, great. So I think it's also a right time for me that, if possible, I share my screen and show a LinkedIn post that I have that can be maybe interesting for people who are trying to get into this field. So I know that I'm creating more competition when myself want to look for a job when I graduate, but that's also how I can maybe help others. So if people come to my LinkedIn profile, which is just Hadi Sotudeh, they can come to scroll down and come to the featured section. There is a post that I have, the first one in recent month. You just click on here, and the reason that I have this post is that I got a lot of questions, direct messages from people that how I can start in a field of football and data and analytics. And well, it was really difficult to spend and have a meeting for each person and try to answer. One solution was that I just ignored those messages. Another solution was that I have maybe a blog post, or in this case, it's a LinkedIn post that I can just share that link with everyone. Because, of course, having a one-to-one meeting with every individual was not a scalable solution to go forward. So this way, you can come up with this FAQ post that I have. And what I do here is I try to link it to other posts and provide an overview for people on how to start in this field. I also the lecture summaries for the Doctoral Analytics course at ETH Zürich. That these are the lecture summaries that I basically prepared myself by attending the lecture, for which I was also a teaching assistant. And also there are some other content on the job market situation. If someone wants to do a master's study or PhD study in this field, what are the possible options? The book recommendations if you just want to read about this field, and also as the extra activity if you're interested in hackathons, competitions, or scientific conferences and workshops, basically where to find them. And the last post that so far I have, I will keep this post updated, is how and where to find data jobs, which is mainly just keep following me, and I will try to share with people the new job positions in the, whether it's in a football club or a media or football association. I just put it on my LinkedIn and share it with everyone.
Yeah, I think this is, I was going to say, Hadi, this is also kind of backing up what I'm saying about being networked and kind of being connected with people within the space, because what I find is that there are definitely people that are happy to help and happy to have conversations, and it's got to be around using tools like LinkedIn. I've seen it quite a lot on Twitter as well recently, of kind of a couple of people starting football analytics and football data Twitter threads and kind of accounts and profiles. So yeah, I think it's just about being able to do a bit of research, find out whether it's on LinkedIn or Twitter of who these people are and how to connect with them. And as I said, I think there are always out there people willing to help. I think for people that are looking to get into this area, it's just about trying to use as many connections and as many different sources to find these people.
Yeah, I think Twitter was a really good place before the takeover in terms of the people active in the football analytics community. And there were a lot of activities, but after the takeover by the new owner, I think, I don't know what happened to a lot of those people, but I don't see that many activities. And my own preference is to just do it here on LinkedIn, because yeah, it just seems a better environment, more stable, I would say.
Yeah, definitely the case. Well, look, thanks for sharing that. I was going to say, now going sort of back to you and obviously some of the work you've done. So really keen just to I guess, as much as you can and can't tell the audience, the work you were doing then with the Dutch Football Association. Do you want to just, I guess, explain some of the projects you were working on, and I guess a bit of an introduction to some of the techniques from, I guess, a bit more of a statistical side of things as to kind of the types of types of methods and the types of models that people like yourself want to create and want to get involved in?
Yeah, so clearly I cannot talk about the details and what was happening there, but I can provide a big picture that I think it's really applicable to a lot of other football teams that they are doing something similar. So as I mentioned, there are people called performance analysts or video analysts working for a football association or a football team. And one of their main tasks is to tag video clips. So they are watching a football match, they are using a solution maybe like a sports code from Huddle or like Dartfish. And the coaching staff has told that person that we are interested in counter presses. So try to watch our match live in the game and tag all the moments that the counter press situation starts and ends. And then basically you are sequencing the whole match time when a specific situation starts and ends. And this is like a data creation. You are creating a data set. This is manual. And also it really depends on your interpretation of what you have understood about the counter press. That's how you are implementing and collecting the data. So one drawback is that, well, for each match, you need to go through this process of manual tagging. And if you are looking for the same concept from the opponent team, and each week you are facing a new opponent, what you need to do is go over the last 5 matches, for example, from the opponent and do the same. So it's going to take too much time. It's not going to take 5 multiplied by 90 minutes. It's going to take more than that because you're just not watching a football match and enjoying it. You will really try to stop and replay and really see if you should really start the sequence with the counter press, let's say, as an example or not. And then when you have created this data set, then you can look, for example, whether you want to look into the video footage of all those situations, or if you want to just do some counts, how many counter press, for example, this team faced and were on the pitch. But then another drawback apart from the time consumption part is that if you ask 2 video analysts from the same club to do the same thing for one match, to collect all the counter pressing moments, you will see that they maybe agree only in 70% of the time. And the issue is that usually there is no proper documentation what they mean by counter press at the club. Not every video analyst has the same understanding. So all these issues were the reasons why my 1-year thesis was tasked to write a pipeline, prepare a pipeline that uses event and tracking data to calculate these customized concepts to replace, ideally, the tagging process. So you don't have people do the tagging, but you have the data that maybe it has a good accuracy in the tracking data and the event data, really depends on the provider. But with that assumption, you can build a pipeline that outputs those customized sequences. And each club has a different definition. I can't express what's really general. Some clubs have something that no one else has heard about it. So it's just how they define it. And then ideally, you can export the results into your video tool that you are using for creating video clips or doing graphics. And it goes through a dashboard where you can create different visualizations, scatter plots, and bar charts, or whatever you want, depending on what question you want to answer. And I think that's a project that maybe a lot of performance analysis departments are interested in. And maybe what they do with interns is exactly that. They pick 1 or 2 concepts and try to automate that. And that also was the case what I was doing during my 1-year thesis. I don't know how many different concepts they were, maybe 6, 9. And I was tasked to have this automated pipeline.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you said, it's quite a good point. Is for something like counter press, I'm sure there's different definitions of what that means depending on the managers or the coaches' theory of exactly what they mean by that. Because I'm sure maybe what Man City kind of classifies a counter press, a team that sit back and kind of don't press as much, might have a varied opinion or a definition of that.
And the interesting point here is that when you talk with people, performance analysts at a club, they say, we want to automate this. And then you say, okay, can you give me the documentation? They say there isn't documentation. Counter press. Counter press, well, yes, counter press, but the issue is that you want to define it with numbers. The team, for example, puts pressure on the opponent within this time window, within this meter. So you need to have numbers. And So the first task is you start from below zero. You start and working with the person to have that documentation through different meetings and iterations. And that itself takes a lot of time because there are two ways to do that. First one is that you have meetings, and each time you come up with a new rule because you want to have a set of rules that identify you a counterpress situation. And then it becomes, I don't know, 10, 20 different rules that go to if else, and then, yes, this is a counterpress start, for example. Or you want to build a black box machine learning model, and the issue there is that you need to have labels, and then, well, someone needs to start doing the labels. You can get some labels from people, but you know that depending on who is on that match on that day, the labels differ, the quality, because they don't agree themselves with each other. So this brings some interesting challenges that maybe during your studies or even when you're working for a proper company you don't face with. And because there is really documentation, maybe it's the first thing to do, but in a lot of football clubs, you see even the top tier clubs, it's just missing.
Yeah. Do you think then, I guess, moving forward, so when obviously managers move club, a lot of the time they take with them maybe their first team coach and a goalkeeper coach and so on. I guess maybe it's not necessarily the same sometimes with like the sports scientists. I know like physios, for example, can be at football clubs for 15, 20 years, regardless of who the manager is. Do you think, given the different definitions of some of these metrics, we'll be at a point maybe in 5, 10 years as clubs and managers grow out their staff even more to have full-fledged data teams, that these data specialists will then become part of the manager's backroom staff rather than the club itself, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. So I think the issue there is that right now there is a hierarchy. So when, as a data scientist, you work for a club, you are not directly working with the head coach. You probably never see the head coach or not the players in a meeting. So you prepare something and you give it to the performance analyst. So the performance analyst is the stakeholder that you are dealing with. And then the performance analyst summarizes maybe the report, gives it to the head of the department. And the head of the department of performance analysis gives it to the assistant coach. And then the assistant coach goes to the
And then it
meeting
goes.
and shows like this is you don't even know what he says from what your work
Yeah.
and what he takes because you don't have that part is missing. And unless there is a direct connection, which I'm not sure in how many clubs you really, as a data scientist, work directly with the assistant coach or the head coach. Unless there is no direction, probably they even don't know you. They just see
Yeah.
someone is in one of those offices and working with the laptop, and yeah, so you just say hello, and he says hello, and then that's the level of the conversation you have.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it should be that connection and the people really get to know each other and feel that okay, this person is someone who adds value, and then maybe we see what you said, but I don't see that maybe in a near future to happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair thing to say in terms of the hierarchy. I'm sure Pep Guardiola isn't speaking to their data scientists about what they're coding in Python one day. I'm sure there's definitely a chain of command
But
that's
if they
raised
are
through.
and the data scientist is listening, they can just maybe send us a message that that's not the case. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're open to feedback on that. And I was going to say, look, appreciate obviously a lot of the work you've done has been, I guess, more on kind of the studying and the research part. But from what you've seen, I guess in the football world since kind of being involved in the last 4 or 5 years in various different capacities, what's the best kind of example of data use, whether that is, I guess, from a statistic or any sort of clubs or you've seen that really kind of utilize the data to the best to the best that they can?
yes, so I think the best example that probably everyone nowadays more or less knows is the XG metric, expected goals. That I think even the fans, a lot of the apps that you use to watch and follow football matches, you see among the stats, the XG metric, and that's not only used by the fans in the media, but also internally at clubs it is used. And I think this is also another right moment for me to share my screen because I think this also becomes really interesting to show you what I have here. So this is like a tutorial I prepared for the course that we have on how to build an expected goals model. And to just make it more interesting, we would say, I tried to find out quotes where coaching staff during their press conference talk about XG. So here I just have some examples, and I think the one that I really like is this one, which is very long, from Thomas Tuchel, and how they are using XG as a metric to monitor different decisions that they make and how it impacts their team in a long run. So, for example, if they make a change in the formation and then they monitor their matches over, I don't know, 10 matches, how they perform in terms of XG. So it just, so that's really a clear application that they have. And it's different from other coaches that maybe they use it in their post-match conference mainly as an excuse. For example, I have one in the beginning, which I think is maybe among the first ones, that just you lost the game and you say, well, it was a close game. So it's not really something that maybe you are using. Maybe when you're before entering to the interview zone, you just ask what was the XG, and then you want to have something to say to the fans. Well, it was a close game. They were lucky or something like that. And yeah, I think that's one of the metrics, because its success is because a lot of people know in the media, they are talking maybe about it, in the fans know about it, and also clubs and coaching staff, maybe some of them are not that educated in terms of math and stats, but they are still have a feeling about it and try to make use of it.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite an easy stat to use for both managers and fans, but it's pretty crazy how much XG over the last couple of years has become just a massive talking point now. When Sky Sports do their post-game analysis, it's one of the first things that we see, alongside possession and shots on target and things like that.
Yeah, so I think I have some examples. So even in the video games we have it. So this is, and then I also have one example. This is from even the TV broadcast. You see that in the Bundesliga after the match, or also in the La Liga, they call it goal probability, something similar. And then this is also the Sky Sport example you mentioned. I'm myself a Chelsea Football Club fan, and this is, I think, maybe it just the coach was really under pressure in that moment, and this stat was really something that was interesting to show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I was going to say just on this, and appreciate obviously a lot of what you've done is more on the performance side, but I was speaking to this in an earlier episode. Do you think that there is such an emphasis now on data and XG and I guess dribbling completion rates and things like this, that we might end up at a point where we do in the football game firstly lose out on the new Lionel Messi? Because I'm sure if you looked at Messi's stats maybe from a younger age and you looked at his like expected dribbles and his dribble completion, etc., whether that when clubs are making signings or transfers or looking at players, they are so focused on the stats hitting a certain mark that maybe we might miss out on something like that. And then in addition to that, again, because the importance of XG and the importance of these stats, do you think we're going to miss out at some point of the world of amazing goals from 35 yards out? Because if you look at the statistics, the chance of them scoring from 35 yards out compared to making, say, 10 to 15 passes before making that shot away, do you think we are going to lose that element of that natural instinct because it's just going to become pure numbers based and statistics based, that we're going to miss out on some of those things? What are your thoughts on that?
I think we have already missed out on some of those things, like the long range shots that you mentioned. So at least when I was growing up watching a lot of football matches, 2002 World Cup, 2006 World Cup, you saw that a lot of those shots taken from long range. And well, yes, if it becomes a goal, it's really, really enjoyable to watch, but most of the case it doesn't. And then maybe if you compare the number of those attempts, even over time, you can see a decrease. Some attributed to XG because coaching staff are just saying if you are far from the goal, you don't take the shot, you pass the ball to the better options and go closer. And even some teams, I think, maybe have some zones that you only shoot if you enter to this zone. And yes, so that's maybe one aspect and consequence of being data driven, I would say, because your focus is not maybe on playing it, maybe how to say, you don't want to entertain, you want to win.
Yeah.
And well, it can be a different approach to win than entertain. And your goal is different from a fan who is watching the match and enjoys those moments. And I think that's really the case that at least I can relate to. And another aspect that you mentioned is that, yeah, of course, the data that we have is limited. So we have tracking, event, GPS, and we are missing out on a lot of data that has nothing to do with the physical performance of the players. It's about like really their psychology and how they think and see the match, feel the match, and we don't have data in a scalable way on those aspects. So whatever we do will be limited on the physical performance, and it can be because of the blind spot that we have that we are not aware. We will miss out on some stuff. But the point is that I think it's a trade-off. So yeah, it can be that you
Yeah.
miss something, but depending on the large pool of players that you have, for example, and you want to do a player recruitment, you want to have maybe a process, a consistent process that is repeatable, and then you feel that at least in those aspects that you're measuring, you are good enough to create a short list, and then from the short list you try to combine and also have the video and also the scouts who watch with the eye. But there is a first filtering process, for example. But you know that
Yeah.
I mentioned there are a lot of aspects that we don't have data yet, and like I think in the tracking data right now we only treat each player as a point, and we know each player is not a point. And on the field, they have the skeleton and the 3D that some providers try to provide that information to, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I guess it's also a risk and reward aspect, isn't it, as well? Because you look at a club like Brighton, who obviously a lot of their players that they sign are based off data. The majority of their players they get right, and I guess that's because they are following a certain model. I'm sure there'll be one or two players that they might have missed that don't fall into the model, but I'm sure if you look at it from a longer term objective and kind of what they've done over the last however many years, they obviously have a model which they think is tried and tested. And because of that, even if there might be the odd player who might miss out because they fall with it outside of that model, they like to think the majority of their signings and the majority of their recruitment is better than not, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah. Cool. And I was going to say, in terms of what you see as, I guess, those conversations that you've had, especially when you were working, albeit for a short time, as a consultant, the conversations that you're having with people that maybe don't come from a technical background within football and within sports, how do you go about having those conversations with them so that they understand what you're trying to get at, and they're understanding, I guess, the models and the methods that you're kind of going through in terms of doing your research and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think in the experience I had, I was working with people who maybe came from the performance analysis background, so in terms of the education that they had in the university, and it seems they have some modules or some basic courses on data aspects. And I think that was maybe made the job easier for me to have a conversation. But as a general, let's say, point, if I want to mention, is try to learn the language that they speak. And they are like the end users, and maybe the end user doesn't need to know exactly about all the details in terms of the machine learning part that you are using, but he cares or she cares about the output. And also you need to build the trust that the output is what he or she wants. So, and then how you want to build that trust, maybe show that really works in some situations, or like this is the accuracy, and then accuracy maybe is easy to explain. Out of 10 situations, we are correctly identifying 8 of them, for example. And you can maybe find a simple language to explain it, but also over time learn the language and the vocabulary that you're using and try to have a conversation with them.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. And next question I had is, in terms of your opinion, I guess, do you think that, given that the use of data in football has only, been present in maybe sort of the last 5 to 10 years properly? I know that there's always been an aspect of it, but definitely not in terms of, I guess, football clubs having the size of data teams that some of them do now. Do you think the next generation of players who are going to be around the data a lot more often are going to be much more, as footballers themselves, more data driven than maybe the generation right now that are kind of heading towards the end of the career, where it's only really been present in their lives or in their careers for maybe the last kind of couple of years, compared to maybe sort of I guess, a 21-year-old breaking through now who even in the last 5 years, whilst they've been making their way from the youth setup to the first team, will just have data and numbers everywhere they go.
Yeah, I think that's the case because of with the new generation and what they are exposed to. So if they are just following the football match and they install one of these apps, they see some stats like Xcede, and then that's maybe how they keep tracking a match and also have a conversation. I think you also see that with the younger generation of coaches who are maybe more and coming from a performance analysis background. And of course, compared to a coach who is maybe 70 or 80, I don't know if we have a coach who is 80, but maybe, yeah. So then it's not really something new for them. And that was not like a transition for them from how they were coaching or looking at life before and after maybe 2000. And there are also a lot of, I don't know, companies who offer solutions to players. I will mention their names anyways. I think one is My Game Plan, a startup based in Belgium that they provide stats to players. So players install the app and they can progress, have a report on their progress, their individual progress, and since they have clients, so it means there is a demand or players are interested in having that. There are some even companies who are focusing on academies, try to provide sensors. I think there is one in the UK, Player Maker, if I'm pronouncing correctly. So they have like the GPS on the shoes, and then kids can look at the apps in the parents' apps and see what's their skill from 0 to 100 and compare it with the same segment of players, maybe in the same country, in the same range. And yeah, so when they are educated and they are exposed to it, of course, you can expect that when some of them, maybe 1% of them, become a professional football player, then they want to keep track of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, like even StatSports. I know we spoke about them on the last episode. They the head of data science, Thiago, was saying that they actually now have a product which the consumers can buy. So even if you're playing Sunday League football, even if you're join an academy at a young age of 7, 8, 9, you can wear one of their devices and you can have all your data sent to your phone in an app. Tracked everything as kind of as soon as you are, and it's all obviously completely live data. So I think that's definitely going to be the case, that these footballers, especially those that go from academy to obviously first team, are just going to be purely kind of just data in front of them everywhere they go. And then I was going to say just last question to round up. So obviously your career is you're kind of completing your PhD and still got kind of a little bit more to do with that. But if you could give advice to someone, I guess, that's maybe at school now or is kind of 15, 16 and they know that they want to study something like data science or mathematics or engineering, economics, and they do want to get into the world of sports or even follow a career path such as yours where it's more research focused and even if it's in the education world rather than, I guess, practically working directly for a football club. What bit of advice would you give to them or would you give to yourself back then if you could start all over again?
Mm-hmm. So I think the path is, more or less the right path. So you go through the computer science education and then data science education and take the general courses, and you can do your master's studies in data science, so nothing to do with football or sports. And you just build the foundation and have a proper skill in programming, whether it's Python or R. And that's where you can really have the self-learning, try to read articles, papers, how data has been used in football, and get that understanding. You should be patient. It can take time to find a job. It's not that common yet compared to other industries when it comes to data science, that you maybe can find a lot of job positions out there. It's getting better, but it's really competitive. It's really restricted to some countries. So it takes time, and you should be really committed, patient, and maybe you think long term about it. Have really a good way to monitor the job positions, and then when there is the right opportunity, you go for it. I have more details on the education if someone wants to do something more related to the football data science in masters or even for PhD or job situation on the FAQ post I have on LinkedIn. So if maybe you can also put that in the description of the podcast, that can be useful. But I feel this is the right path. Well, a good path. This is not the only path to come, because if you look for the career path of other people who ended up becoming a football data scientists, you can come up with a lot of different variations. Someone who did
Yeah,
something in physics and astronomy and then ended up in a football club. So it can
yeah.
be really, yeah, there is that randomness or luck or, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think the education part is obviously important, but I think as we said earlier on, I think the doing the reading, being connected, doing your own projects, regardless of what degree you study at university, I think that's where the value will really come. But look, thank you very much for this, Hadi. It's great having you on, and really good to get an insight from your career, what you've done so far, and also your thoughts on how people get into the sports world, which I think is definitely important. So thank you very much again, and it was great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. And in case any of the audience wants to reach out, you just can find me on LinkedIn, Hadi Sotudeh, and just send me a message. And hopefully, I will answer.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you very much again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a nice day.